Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Middle Complex here, and today I've got a really cool custom knife overview to do with you guys. This is the Marfione Custom Dirac. Beautiful, beautiful little custom OTF. Now, before we get started here, I'm going to talk about the Dirac in production form and custom form because there's a lot of good here. The Dirac, you know, just looking at it, looking at the smaller version, which is this, and then the large version, which is the Delta, I thought, man, they nailed a lot of things that have just been awkward about modern OTFs for a long time. So keep in mind, while this specific version of it is ridiculously expensive, this is a custom knife, meaning we have a lot of handwork, a lot of human interaction. You know, achieving a mirror polish on a blade like this is not a simple task. So understand that this version of the knife is very expensive, but the Dirac, the standard Dirac and the Delta are actually very reasonably priced, right? And in these production forms, they're still amazing knives, so you can still have this, you know, great EDC size of an OTF for a very reasonable price. And I will be linking two different places where you guys can go and check them out. But keep in mind, they may or may not be sold out depending on when it is that you're watching this video. This was sent to me once again by the legendary @GoodNowJeff on Instagram. Please give him a follow. It is because of people like Jeff that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It's also because of my generous patrons. Thanks so much for supporting me during this time. If you'd like to check out my Patreon and get your hands on some of these cool stickers, there's a link down in the description. The support would mean the world to me. Let's go ahead and get a measurement here. Overall length of the Microtech Dirac coming in at, I mean, if you want to count the glass breaker, it's like maybe 7 1/8. Overall length really, though, to the handle is about 6.8 inches. The blade length is under 3 inches. Under 3 inches! Let's show that again. Yeah, that's unquestionably under 3 inches. So, now I understand there's a lot of things keeping this knife from being legal in a lot of places, right? This particular one, is there something on the blade? Get out of here. This particular one is dagger ground, and it is actually sharp on both sides. So that's going to make it illegal in some places. So, you know, definitely, you know, take that into consideration. But for those of you who have a 3-inch law, you know, and you want to carry an OTF, you should be able to carry this guy unless your area has you know, legal limitations on dagger ground blade. So that's pretty cool. I really, really like that. Let's do some size comparisons. This is not a big knife, not by a long shot. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1, the Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. Sorry, let's get that closer. How about up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. That glass breaker throwing off my size comparisons. And last but not least, the most comparable in size is the Spyderco Para 3. The Para 3 coming in at 7 1/4 inches overall. However, cutting edge is very, very similar, as you guys can see there. So that's this is just a very interestingly sized knife. I have one other Microtech in my possession. It's kind of a ridiculous size comparison. I put up against the Microtech Combat Troodon Hellhound. The Combat Troodon's coming in at over 9 inches. So yeah, I mean, this is I think to date currently in production their biggest double action OTF. And then as far as this versus like the UTX 75. This knife, I believe, is the Dirac is between the UTX 75 and the UTX 85 in size, but the big difference being that the firing switch is on the outside, the main face, rather than on the spine, which we're going to talk about. All right, let's do a hardware check. We can't because this uses the tri-wing screws. Guys, I know, you can't get into the knife and this proprietary hardware. Oh, it's so terrible. Yeah, it sucks. I would like to be able to get into my knife. You can't get into your knife here, and it is what it is. If you have an issue with your Microtech knife, something that you feel like would require taking it apart and getting into it, contact Microtech Knives. As long as you've been using the knife the way that it was intended, you know, as a knife, right, then I would imagine they're going to take care of you. I don't speak for Microtech Knives. Contact them, talk with them, you know, etc. But yeah, the tri-wing screws certainly do look cool. That's something that can be said there. In this case, we have a custom knife. So these have been anodized and they are titanium. Of course, you can see the finish work on the handle scales is different than what you would... What is this debris that's trying to just be on the knife? Sorry about that. But yeah, we can't do a hardware check is what I'm getting at here. How about carry profile? So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see that the entire frame is actually thinner than the Spyderco Para 3. How about this way? In terms of height and length up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, two knives that have unquestionably awkward carry profiles and nobody ever seems to complain about. This is a non-cumbersome object, period. Height and length and every you know, any way you can look at this. It's not a difficult thing to carry. The frame generally with these guys is aluminum, and the chassis and the internals are steel. The blade is steel. I am not going to touch this blade with my calipers, even though tape is on it. But I can tell you that it's probably a pretty thin stock. You can see their stock thickness up against like the Rat, and the Rat is, I think, like 120 thousandths. Yeah, this is a thin blade. Let's just leave it at that. The exact measurement, I don't know, that is incredibly important, but it's under 120 thousandths for sure. And weight on this guy coming in at, ooh, a nice 2.26 ounces. This is a very easy, I mean, in terms of like an EDC-friendly OTF, this is just awesome. I like a little bit of heft in my knives, but I know that people get really hung up on the dimensions and the weight ratios and blah, blah, blah. And that's understandable, right? I like a little bit of a heavier knife because I like being reminded that it's in there subconsciously. But there is something to be said, especially considering I've spent a lot of time in my house wearing sweatpants as of late because of the current situation in the world. I've come to really appreciate some lighter, thinner, you know, not so crazy, ultra heavy knives. And the Dirac accomplishes that in every way, period. It's just, this is a great knife in terms of carry. All right, have we covered everything? I think we have. So again, guys, we're going to be talking, the reason I say overview when we talk about a full custom knife is because, number one, custom knives cost a lot of money. They are completely outside of the realm of normal or, you know, things that people naturally acquire, right? Even a knife enthusiast, it's still, there's very few of us who really go out there and, you know, wanting to spend this much money on a knife, right? But we're also going to talk about the Dirac, the production Dirac today, because it's you know, it's incredibly similar. In fact, it's the same thing aside from the excess human attention and the excess handwork that goes into the knife. So that being said, here's my favorite part about the Dirac. The firing switch is on the face of the blade. I love how the Benchmade Infidel looks. Yes, I'm saying Benchmade Infidel on purpose. I love how it looks, but I was so disappointed with like so many other things, right? On the Dirac, you are getting that same sort of satisfaction-based, well, the satisfactory symmetry, right? I got a weird thing about symmetry, and this knife is truly 100% symmetrical. The reason I like the firing switch on the face is not only does it add to that symmetry, but when you pull this knife from your pocket, like I would pull this knife like this, my thumb is already in position to deploy it. When I pull an OTF with the switch on the spine from my pocket, right, it's here, then I reposition and then I fire. That's a pretty minimal, nitpicky, stupid little thing to talk about, right? I understand that. It doesn't change the fact that I just like it on the face. I think this is a better position for the firing switch, right? Now, in this situation, it is kind of set up intentionally for right-handed people, right? I don't think the pocket clip can be switched. Maybe it can be. Can it be? Man, even if, here's the thing. Even if it can be switched, if I'm left-handed, right, I still have to readjust and you know, flip it over for my finger to do that, unless you want to do it with your index finger, which you can. It's just less comfortable. So, right. So lefties, it's not going to be as convenient unless they make a left-handed version and the switch is on the other side. But for right-handed people, man, that just feels 1,000 times more natural to me. And on top of that, this firing switch is incredibly easy to manipulate. And a lot of people might say, well, that's a custom knife. Is it going to be different than, on the standard production forms? So I've handled the UTX-85, the Ultratech, a ton of different Microtechs. And the truth is that they're all pretty easy to manipulate now, except for this big guy. These bigger guys have a pretty nasty hard switch. And, I guess the spring tension might be different in those because they're bigger. I don't know. On these smaller guys, no. It's not quite as smooth. Well, I mean, that one's pretty smooth. It's not quite as smooth as the Guardian Tactical Recon. That's got the steel plate and the bearings underneath, right? But truthfully, this is super easy to manipulate. Up and down. It's just easy. The firing power is great. It's got that nice Microtech clickiness. It's very enjoyable, right? And on top of that, you have and especially in this one, extremely minimal blade play in this guy. I mean, I would imagine that has something to do with custom knives, or the fact that this is a custom, or maybe that's just what you're going to get with the Dirac. And that's what I want to see. I was always let down by the Benchmade Infidel because it just was like, flopping around in there. And it's fine. I know that the Benchmade Infidel is like, there's a lot to proof that it's just, it'll hold up to abuse. But I've also seen X-Ring really go out of his way to abuse Microtech knives, and they are unquestionably durable regardless of the form that they come in. That being said, this particular guy has a pretty needle-like delicate tip, so this isn't a knife you want to pound into a board, even if X-Ring did it. I would say probably don't do that. Look at this mirror finish. Oh my gosh. Guys, this is not something that you see. This is not a semi-mirror, I mean, a lot of times companies will advertise a mirror finish and it's not a true mirror. This is a true mirror. There is nothing, there's no part of this. If you're seeing a mark on the blade, it's debris from the air, which I can't seem to keep off of the blade. Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, it's a true mirror. That takes a lot of effort, right? And some people are going to see value in that and some people won't, right? If you're just looking at a knife as a tool, right, and you're calculating the value based on the materials and what you see in the knife world that corresponds, between value and materials, no, you're not going to see value in that, right? So leaving a comment and going, how could that possibly be? It's above and beyond where you put your value, right? And that's not to say anybody's right or wrong. It seems like I have to say this every single time I talk about a knife that costs more money than what people expect for the materials. This is a custom knife. It is made in the United States. It has intensive labor that goes into it. So if you don't see the value in it, you can just ignore it. But there are people who seek these out and buy them. Actually, quite often, people want stuff like this. It may not be everybody. In fact, it's very few people who seek this kind of stuff out. But yeah, there is, and truthfully, I do understand it. There is a satisfaction to having an object that somebody, put a lot of excess time and labor into to make sure that it, stands above in terms of aesthetics, from its production counterpart. Again, though, that's not to say that the production version is any less capable, because the truth is that no, it's not. I mean, they're exactly the same in terms of what they are capable of doing. So yeah, the mirror polish looks really, really good on this guy, and something that Microtech does an excellent job of, no matter what, whether you're looking at a production version of the knife or a custom version of the knife, is getting that center line perfectly down the middle. Talk about perfection in symmetry. Oh my gosh, it's something I got so bent out of shape about on that Benchmade, the Autocrat. God. I mean, I know the handle had lines that didn't yield perfect symmetry, but the blade, when I see a dagger ground blade, I want perfect symmetry. And it's perfect. And, the case is, on Microtech knives, I've had a double ground or a dagger ground combat Troodon. Same thing, line right down the center. Love that. That's what I like to see. That's great. Love the fuller, the Microtech holes. Everything is awesome. The blade comes down, despite being, there's not a lot of room to drop. But it's not a thick stock to begin with, so it does come down to a pretty thin edge. It's not the most absolutely laser beam edge, but talk about the stuff you're going to use this knife for, the general EDC tasks you're going to use this knife for. I mean, this is about as convenient as it gets. These, by the way, are generally M390 or 204P. I've heard that every now and then people get them with LMAX. LMAX is still great. Honestly, S35VN, LMAX, 204P, M390, fine. I'll take any of them. I'm honestly, with those steels, I'm perfectly okay with any of them. On a custom knife, on a super high-end production knife, I'm happy with that. I think Microtech is using the right steel. But, I mean, think about this. You know, for an EDC knife, the benefit of carrying an OTF, if you're able to, is that it is about as easy as it gets in terms of, you know, dependability. Pulling it from your pocket, deploying it, making the cut, and then putting it away. The fewest movements that I can think of are directly associated with an OTF. And the fact that this is small, lightweight, compact, and has 2 edges means that you get the maximum benefit of that, especially if you've got one hand that's busy. Everybody's heard my whole ladder thing, right? You're up on a ladder and you got your one hand busy, you know, getting an OTF out, making a cut, putting it away. That you talk about utility and sometimes necessary speed of utility. That is a massive benefit to an OTF. Now, on the flip side, no matter what, right? 10 people off the street, and you're like, hey, look at this. You're going to scare probably 7 out of 10. Because everybody looks at an automatic knife like this, or most people look at an automatic knife, they go, oh, that's illegal. That's all they know. That's all they know about these, is that they are legal and that they have one purpose, and it is an offensive purpose, right? Which is just not the case. I mean, sure, yeah, you know, you can use that for this. You can use a rolling pin for this. You can use, you know, anything can be used in that way. But now, to me, this is a tool. I know I'm going to have people argue with me, but this is a tool. It is a tool of convenience, and one that has been so perfectly crafted. You know, they have really thought about, you know, people wanting to carry a small, lightweight, convenient cutting tool, and they have just nailed every aspect of this. It is comfortable to do over and over again. With Microtechs, they are incredibly dependable. They're not going to fail. The surface of this guy's got that nice, I don't know if they do this by hand, this finish. I mean, the typical Diracs are going to be your aluminum, right? Your hard coat anodized, your Type 3 hard coat anodized aluminum that'll come in a bajillion different colors eventually. I think right now, I'm just seeing them in DLC or tumbled or satin on the blade, and then a black frame. But we know Microtech, they like to do a lot of different colors, so expect that in the future. But yeah, these custom forms come in a million different, you know, versions. You got the Damascene steel blades, you got the mirror polish blades, right? There's a bunch of different stuff that can come out. Really, really like the firing switch on this guy. Really like the positioning of it. The glass breaker, they've done a great job here recently of not making them incredibly pokey or pointy. So it does have a glass breaker, and I'm sure it functions. I have no need for it. But the thing that I used to complain about with some glass breakers is when they're super ultra pointy and you're going to push something like this into your pocket. A lot of times I'll use my palm to push it in there. The pointy ones, that really bothered my hand. But these guys with the little ball bearing at the tip, nah, that's not going to bother you. It also carries completely deep. Check out this pocket clip, by the way, guys. Here, and I'll compare it to the one on this is my signature series, right? Same idea, but this guy's been polished. That's nice, right? Doesn't add anything, you know, in terms of utility, but it's nice. You can see here it says Dirac. It gives the birthday and then the number. So this is number 9 for custom Diracs. Then you have the, I guess number 9 maybe in this series. I don't know. You have the Marfione dagger on there. By the way, we'll give you guys a look at the box. You get a lot of cool stuff with a custom Microtech. Really nice box. It's got the magnetic thing on there. You get the carry pouch, which is really cool. And then it comes with the microfiber cloth. And then, if I can get this out here, this plate. The declaration of authenticity, right? 204P mirror polished. And then you can see there, hefted anodized aircraft alloy with blue titanium hardware. I honestly don't know what the hefted thing means, but really cool. And then he signs it there. So yeah, you get a lot of really nice stuff with your knife, and I love, these are my favorite pouches. This little thing, the Marfione dagger comes off. It's just Velcro, but I don't know why I think that's neat. I like that, you know, and it comes with the little thing on the zipper pouch, and you open this up and you've got another, it actually comes in another pouch. So if you're concerned as far as whether or not the thing will be thoroughly protected in shipping and over time while it's stored, which is most likely what people will do with this knife, yeah, this is some pretty serious fortification, and it's a nice way to keep it stored. So I appreciate that. You know, not that the box is super important, but that's really nice. Guys, that's about it. The truth is, to date, I think that this is the best EDC OTF that exists in terms of its production form. The price on this guy, it's a lot. This is probably a $1,400 custom knife. And somewhere between $1,200 and $1,500 is my guess. The production version of the Dirac, right? So subtract the finishes, the titanium hardware, subtract the polishing on the pocket clip, right? Production version of the Dirac, which is US made, coming in at about $270 to $280. The Dirac Delta coming in at $350. Yes, this is about as perfect as it gets for an OTF. My preference would actually be the larger one because of the dimensions. I don't think the larger one's going to be super heavy either. I think the larger one comes in at something like 8.5 to 8.75 inches overall with about a 3.5 inch cutting edge. Yeah. Either one of these is great, but man, talk about the perfect EDC. I told Jeff this. He's thinking right now, he's probably nodding his head. I told Jeff this. I said, I think the Dirac is probably the most perfect OTF that exists, right? And in terms of, EDC and trying to minimize it and keep it under a certain length and, maximizing the utility and convenience and blah, 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 the smaller Dirac, the standard Dirac, what you're seeing right here, God, what a fantastic OTF. This will absolutely be going, this version of the knife is going to go in my custom knives playlist, but I will try to get my hands on a production Dirac and go over it again, basically just so I can put it in my most recommended knives. I don't want to put this video in there and confuse people like he's putting a $1,400 full custom knife in his most recommended knives playlist. No, but the Dirac itself, the standard Dirac, yes, is so recommendable. Like I said, there will be links down in the description, multiple places where you guys can go and check these out. Depends on when you're watching the video. It may or may not be sold out, but check out the Dirac. Oh my goodness, this is a wonderful knife. Guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today's overview of this beautiful custom knife. Thank you so much, Jeff, for letting me check this out. Really, really cool. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this metal complex logo right here and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.